So far, so good. Just direct the crane to keep lowering that girder down slowly. Slowly. Only a few feet more. Careful. Okay, have the crane set it down when you're ready. That's perfect. Now let's get that girder welded into place while the crane brings up another one. If everyone works really hard and there aren't any surprises, this skyscraper's gonna be finished right on schedule.
Hey, Fireman Scott! Fireman Scott!
Hey, Digger, it's really good to see you again.
Thanks, Fireman Scott. But is something wrong? I mean, you aren't always this happy to see me. Are you sick today?
No, Digger, it's just that a job site is a place where a lot of hard work goes on.
Everybody knows that.
And it's no place to play games. But we can still have fun learning about construction.
That's what I wanted to hear. What are you building this time?
A skyscraper.
A skyscraper? Wow! No wonder there are so many workers here.
It takes about 400 men and women working together as a team to build a skyscraper this big.
I want to help too. Can I, Fireman Scott, please? Can I?
I don't know, Digger. It can be pretty dangerous working way up high on a skyscraper, and nobody wants an accident to happen.
Oh, don't worry about me, Fireman Scott. I'm a lot better than I used to be.
I'm sure you are, Digger, but it takes a lot of skill to operate all this heavy machinery.
I can do anything if you show me how. After all, you know everything, don't you, Fireman Scott?
Gosh, I don't know about that, but I can show you a few things about how my friends and I build skyscrapers.
Well then, Fireman Scott, what are we waiting for? Let's go, let's go, let's go!
Hey, Digger, hold on!
A construction site is a fun place to visit because there are so many different jobs to see. Let me show you around, Digger, and I'll introduce you to some of the people and equipment you'll be learning about.
Watch out, Fireman Scott! Here comes a big truck!
That's called a dump truck. They're real important on a job site.
I know what that is!
Really, Digger?
It's a bulldozer!
That's right. Gosh, I wonder how you knew that.
It takes one to know one, Fireman Scott.
Not all important jobs are big. Some are tiny, like welding iron beams together.
Do people like working on a job site?
Well, the work is hard, but if you enjoy making things and being with other people, then everyone can have fun too.
What else is fun around here, Fireman Scott?
Let me think. Oh, one more thing. You'd better be prepared to get real dirty. It's the only way to get anything done around here.
I like to get dirty.
That's one thing I can always depend on.
That's a skyscraper, isn't it?
Here on the job site, we call it the tower. Building the tower takes a lot of workers to bring all that steel all the way up to the top. Then the different pieces have to be put together.
I don't see any bulldozers up there. Can I still go to the top, Fireman Scott?
Well, Digger, since you're with me, and I am the foreman, I'll see what I can do.
Thanks, Fireman Scott. I owe you one for this.
So you see, Digger, building a skyscraper can be pretty complicated and requires workers with a lot of different job skills.
Here we are at the top, Digger. Almost 30 stories up in the sky.
Golly, Fireman Scott, I can almost touch the moon. How can you build a skyscraper this tall?
It's not easy. I started working many months ago when there was just an old building standing right here.
What happened to it?
Well, in a big city like this one, you sometimes have to blow up an old building to make room for a new one.
Blowing up an old building takes as much skill as constructing a new one.
Why don't these old buildings blow up everything to smithereens like they do on TV?
Well, no one wants any other buildings to get damaged, so the workers carefully put dynamite in special places to make it collapse straight down on purpose and not spread out into the street.
Can I blow up a building too, Fireman Scott?
Maybe next time, Digger.
Wow, that was great, Fireman Scott.
big hole is called the pit, and it was dug by workers operating huge machines called excavators.
Why is the pit so big? It looks like the excavators didn't know when it was time to stop.
Follow me, Digger, and I'll show you.
After all the pieces from the old building are cleaned up, the workers start to dig the pit.
Is that machine an excavator?
It sure is. This excavator is a backhoe excavator because its special bucket is called a backhoe.
How does the operator make it work?
Inside the cab where the operator sits are control levers. By pulling or pushing these levers back and forth, he can move the excavator's boom and dipper arm. Then the operator can scoop up the dirt by pulling the backhoe back toward the cab.
How much dirt is in the excavator's backhoe?
A lot. This one holds enough dirt to fill about 500 shovels.
Whoops! Here comes a dump truck just in time.
The excavator digs up the dirt from the pit and drops it into the back of the truck. When the truck is full, it drives away to dump out the dirt and then comes back again for another load.
Where does all that dirt go, Foreman Scott?
That's a good question, Digger. Sometimes the dirt is put in a landfill, and sometimes the dirt is recycled. Knowing what to do with the dirt is important to keep our environment healthy.
Why is that worker carrying wood? I thought skyscrapers were made of steel.
That wood is put there temporarily to hold back the street from caving in. Everything in the pit has to be done just right, or you won't be able to build the skyscraper.
The excavators dig the pit so the workers can build a foundation. And the foundation goes deep into the ground and holds the building up straight so that it doesn't fall over in a bad storm or earthquake.
I got it. A foundation under a building is like the roots on a tree.
That's right, Digger. You'll know how to build a skyscraper in no time at all.
What's this gunk, Foreman Scott? It looks like someone's making a lot of sticky oatmeal.
Digger, get out of there. And it's not gunk, it's called concrete.
Well, what's concrete?
Concrete is made from mixing water, sand, and gravel with a clay-based glue called cement.
Dry powder to make cement is pretty heavy, and on this job site you need a lot of it, so workers operating forklifts carry it to the mixers.
What do the mixers do with the cement?
The mixers stir up the cement with water, chalk, rocks, and sand to make the concrete. When it's done, workers guide the wet concrete down a tube.
Ew, this concrete looks really chunky to me.
That means there are a lot of rocks and sand in the concrete.
Is concrete heavy too?
Yup. That's why some mixers are so big that it takes a whole truck to carry them and the concrete around a job site.
Are these workers going to write their names in the wet concrete, Foreman Scott?
No, Digger. These workers are smoothing out the concrete with pieces of wood. When you work with concrete, you've got to work carefully and really fast.
Mixing concrete looks fun, but why do we need it at a job site?
When concrete dries, it hardens like a rock.
You can say that again.
And when you pour concrete into molds, you can make columns and girders for the building's foundation.
What are all these wires lying on the ground for? To pop somebody's tires?
Those aren't wires, Digger. They're pieces of hard steel rods called rebar.
What does rebar have to do with concrete?
A lot. Workers build big rebar frames by welding the rods together. A forklift then picks the rebar frames up and carries them away from the rebar assembly area.
Foreman Scott,
What is it, Digger?
why is heavy equipment always yellow?
Safety is the most important concern on a job site, so the heavy equipment is painted yellow to make it easier to see.
Ooh, just like a school bus.
Right again, Digger. Now, as I was saying, forklifts carry the rebar frames to a place on the job site where special molds are waiting. The forklift lowers the rebar frames into the molds, with the help of the workers, of course.
I think the rebar looks all jiggly.
It won't be for long. The workers unhook the rebar. Then the wet concrete is poured into the molds with the rebar still inside.
I get it. Rebar is like the skeleton for a concrete form.
Very good, Digger. You're catching on real fast.
Thank you, Foreman Scott.
After the concrete hardens, the rebar makes the form extra strong and tough. If the concrete does break for any reason, the rebar will help to keep all the pieces together.
How do the workers get the concrete forms out of the mold?
Well, a concrete form is really heavy, so it takes a crane to lift it out.
Look, Foreman Scott! This crane has crawler tracks, just like me!
Inside the cab, dials tell the operator just how heavy the load is. Levers on the dashboard and pedals by the operator's feet control the movement of the crane's boom.
Okay, now that I know how to make a rebar reinforced concrete form, what do I do with it?
Lots of things.
Like what?
Places like parking lots use concrete forms, as well as foundations for buildings. Concrete isn't bothered by rust or weather, so you can use them to build structures just about anywhere.
What is the crane doing with this form?
The crane stacks the forms into well-organized rows. That way, when the workers need a specific form, they know just where to find it.
Digger! Digger! I hope you didn't fall in the concrete again.
Look at me! Look at me!
Where are you?
I'm up here, Foreman Scott!
Digger! I thought I told you not to play any more games on job sites.
I'm not playing a game. The crane invited me for a ride.
The crane?
Yeah. We've been talking to each other, and the things it can do are really amazing. Let me tell you all about it. This This crane is called a tower crane, and it's the tallest of all the cranes in the world.
Just how tall is it, Digger?
This one's over 400 feet high, but some tower cranes are even taller.
How does it work?
A trolley rolls back and forth along the jib arm. Workers on the ground below attach the girders to the crane's hook. The operator controls levers in his cab, which turn pulleys and cables to lift the load up.
Gosh, that all sounds pretty complicated to me.
Well, Foreman Scott, what did you expect from the world's tallest crane?
The tower crane sure looks skinny. I wonder what keeps it from falling over.
Well, the crane and the tower are connected together for extra support. It also has a counterweight, which balances the load.
It sure is amazing to watch a tower crane at work.
Not only that, you can't make a skyscraper without it.
That was really interesting, Digger. It just goes to show that even a foreman like me can learn something new about construction.
Yeah, but what happens to the girders when they get up here?
Ah, now you're asking one of my favorite questions. See those workers over there? They're called iron workers, and they're famous because iron workers can work high above the ground without becoming scared.
Are you ever scared, Foreman Scott?
Me? Nah. Well, maybe sometimes. But way back when the first skyscrapers were being built, iron workers weren't always so careful as they are today.
After the crane lifted up the girders, it was the job of the iron workers to put all the pieces together. First, they'd start a fire to heat up metal rivets.
What's a rivet, Foreman Scott?
A rivet is like a big steel nail. Iron workers would hammer the hot rivets through holes in the girders and then weld everything into place with a torch.
It looks like it took a lot of teamwork to work this way.
It did, but sometimes there were a few jokers who would cause trouble.
Of course, things on the tower are a lot safer now, and some of the technology has changed, like using bolts instead of hot rivets. But the thrill of being an iron worker hasn't changed a bit.
An iron worker's job begins on the ground when the truck carrying the iron girders and columns arrives at the job site. It takes a lot of planning and organization to bring all the columns and girders up the tower in the right order. The iron workers then attach a hook and cabling to the columns and girders.
That's the tower crane's hook, isn't it, Foreman Scott?
You're right, Digger. Only the tower crane is tall and strong enough to carry all those girders and columns. As soon as the iron workers are finished hooking everything up, the iron begins its long trip up to the top of the tower. And just so nobody gets confused, iron workers use walkie-talkies to let everyone know that another load is on its way.
Foreman Scott, could the iron fall off the hook and squish a worker on the head?
Well, like I said, a job site can be a dangerous place if you aren't careful. Iron workers understand this, and no one has ever been hurt as long as I've been the foreman around here.
I'm gonna keep my hard hat on anyway, just to be safe, Foreman Scott.
That's pretty smart of you, Digger.
What's that blue box going up the tower?
That's called a man lift, and it's like an elevator. The iron workers ride in the man lift to get to the top of the tower.
What happens when the iron workers get to the top?
First, they arrange all the iron so they can get to the pieces they need in the right order. Then, with the tower crane's help, the iron workers start to put together the columns for the skyscraper's frame.
What's a column?
A column is an iron beam that stands up. They're used to add another floor and make the skyscraper taller. The iron workers wait for the crane to bring the column close enough so they can reach for it and put it where it's supposed to go.
Does an iron worker have to be strong?
It sure helps to be strong. Even though the crane does most of the lifting, an iron worker still has to muscle things around once in a while. Even with all this heavy equipment, the workers still do most of the jobs on this site.
Uh-oh, Foreman Scott. What's that iron worker going to do with that metal rod?
He's putting that rod through the holes in the columns so everything is aligned properly. The iron workers do this with each column they assemble. And there are a lot of columns to be assembled in this skyscraper, so everything has to be perfect.
Why do the iron workers use so many columns?
More columns means the skyscraper will be stronger. And the stronger a skyscraper is, the taller it can be built.
How do the iron workers make sure the column doesn't fall down?
Iron workers use nuts and bolts to secure the columns in place. Nuts and bolts are fast and easy to work with, so they're much better than those old hot rivets.
How do the nuts and bolts hold the column up?
Once the iron workers have the column just where they want it, they put the bolts through the holes and tighten them with the nuts. It takes a lot of bolts and nuts to make sure a column stays in place. Some columns even have special brackets to make them extra strong.
How tall are these columns?
Well, columns come in all shapes and sizes. This column is about 20 feet tall.
This looks like a lot of hard work.
It is hard work, but these iron workers don't mind all that much because working at the top of the tower is so exciting.
Why is that iron worker holding a rope? Is he trying to lasso a column?
No, Digger. Once the column is bolted down, the iron workers release the crane's hook with that rope and the crane can go back to work on lifting another one. Nothing else can be assembled at the top of the tower until all the columns are in place.
Here comes another iron worker. Why is he walking along the girder like that? Oh no, Foreman Scott! Look at him crawl all the way up that column without a safety line. He's not gonna fall off the tower, is he?
I don't think so, Digger. The iron workers up here, well, they're almost like acrobats or tightrope walkers at a circus. They are really talented workers and have special abilities so they don't fall.
What's he working on way up there?
These iron workers are hanging iron.
What's hanging iron?
Hanging iron is when the iron workers start to assemble the girders for the skyscraper's floor. The only way to do it is to crawl up a column, and when the crane lifts up a girder, the iron workers reach out for it. Then they align the holes in the girders with those in the columns using their steel rods. This can be pretty tricky if the girder moves, and then the iron workers are riding steel. Sometimes it takes 2 iron workers to get the girder aligned. Finally, when everything is perfect, the iron workers bolt the girder and column together.
How many girders are there in a skyscraper?
Well, again, it depends on how big the skyscraper is, but there might be 20 or 30 girders of different sizes on each floor. Sometimes even more.
Wow!
Let's watch the iron workers hang another girder.
Are these iron workers going to hang more iron?
No, Digger. As you can see, the iron workers have hung a lot of columns and girders today. Now it's time for this group of iron workers to use their powerful impact wrenches to tighten the bolts that were put on by hand. This way, every bolt is extra tight. Soon, other workers will be able to come up to do their job and be safe.
Would you want to be an iron worker, Foreman Scott?
Well, being an iron worker isn't for everyone, and you know, I'm pretty happy with my job as the foreman around here. But if you ask me, an iron worker has a job so special and important that I don't think there isn't a person on this job site who doesn't wonder what it would be like to be one for a day.
So the whole building is put together like a giant erector set.
A super giant erector set.
But what about the floor?
The iron workers put the floor in too.
That doesn't look like a floor, Foreman Scott.
Those are some of the materials which will make up the floor. And just like the columns and girders, everything has to be carried up by the crane.
What kind of materials?
Things like rebar and steel floor panels. And of course, it's another trip to the top in the man lift for the iron workers.
Is that iron worker using a laser ray gun, Foreman Scott?
No, Digger. He's using an electric-powered stud welder.
Well, what does an electric-powered stud welder do?
It heats up a large metal nail, which is sort of like an old rivet, and welds it through the steel floor panel.
Why is this worker wearing a mask over his face?
This worker is a welder, and he's wearing a mask to protect his face and eyes from the sparks and bright light.
What does a welder do?
A welder melts the iron together and trims it using a very hot torch. That way, everything fits together smoothly, and there won't be any leaks in the joints.
Woo! It sure makes a lot of sparks.
You can say that again.
Woo! It sure makes a lot of sparks.
Digger.
What happens after the welders are done doing their job?
Other workers arrive and pour concrete over the metal panels, being very careful to smooth the surface out. Then, the floor is finished.
It looks like the iron workers are doing a real good job, Foreman Scott.
Yep, it's beginning to look like a real skyscraper now.
Except for one thing.
What's that?
There aren't any walls.
That's because the building's only half finished. But things get a little easier from here.
When the skyscraper's ironwork and floors are pretty much done, other workers begin to put the walls on.
How many kinds of walls are there?
Lots of different kinds. Some buildings have stone walls, some buildings have steel walls, but almost all buildings have glass windows. So let's watch the workers put a few of those in.
What's gonna hold the window up?
The crane, of course. These windows were brought up inside the man lift, but the crane helps hold the windows up while the workers fit the window in and tighten it down.
Now it won't be so windy up here.
And the windows are specially tinted to help keep the temperature inside the building comfortable.
Wow, Foreman Scott, it looks like we're just about done.
It won't be long now. These workers are putting on the inside walls.
And here come the offices.
And the electricity, telephones, elevators, and plumbing, too.
Gee, all this learning has made me really thirsty.
That's okay. The drinking fountain is right around the corner.
Mmm-mm. I hope I don't rust.
Well, here it is, Digger. The finished skyscraper. The only job left to do is putting in the sidewalk.
They sure are being careful making it real smooth.
That's because these workers don't want anybody to trip and fall.
I want to see how the skyscraper is built again.
Digger, you've just about worn me out with all your questions.
That's okay, Foreman Scott. Follow me! I wonder what happened to Foreman Scott.
Here I am, Digger.
I wanted to thank you, Foreman Scott, because I really learned a lot today.
You're welcome. I'm glad you can appreciate all the hard work and skill that goes into building a skyscraper like this one.
And when I grow up, I want to be a construction foreman, just like you.
Hearing you say that makes me feel real happy inside, Digger.
Who knows? Maybe someday I'll be the foreman and you can work for me.
Now, wait a minute. I've got years of experience on job sites, and you're just starting out.
But first, I want you to show me how to build a highway.
A highway? Digger, I've still got a lot of work to do here. Besides, how are we going to find a highway under construction?
You gotta move fast, Foreman Scott. Don't get a speeding ticket.
Digger, wait a minute, you can't just...
Catch me if you can.
Slow down, Digger, wait for me!